And we're live now.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to our Committee of Adjustment meeting for September 14th, 2021. It's 5 o'clock. And just before we start, I'll do a few introductions here. The names are on our Zoom screen here, but I'm Member Mayor McQueen. I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. We have Member Allen, Member Clark, Member Martin, and Member Allwood that are with us, part of our Committee of Adjustment team. And we also have our planner is Mr. Rapke, and our secretary treasurer is Cassandra Dillman, and our person behind the screen is our deputy clerk, who is recording and running our meeting. So again, welcome everyone to our viewing public and for the people that are partaking in tonight's meeting. So we do have a published agenda that was on our website, and I'm going to it right now. And so we'll start off with, as I call this meeting to order, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest with the members of the Committee of Adjustment? All right, if one does arise, you can declare at that time and forward the stuff to the Madam Deputy Clerk. So we do have minutes of August 10th, 2021, our last meeting. Would somebody care to move those minutes? Member Martin, the seconder. Member Allwood. Are there any errors or omissions or any discussion points in those minutes? All right, seeing none, all in favor of those minutes? Those are carried. Thank you for that. So moving on to item 4 in our agenda, deferred files. There are no deferred files. So we're moving on to item 5. And this is, we have 5, well, sort of 5. We have 6 decisions for tonight. We have 5 files. And our first file is A13-2021, and this is for Matthews. And I'll read off the regulations here. This public meeting was called under Section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended with respects to an application for a minor variance, file A13-2021, affecting lands owned by Daniel Michael Matthews and Tracy Lynn Matthews, described as being legal description, part lot 22, concession 11, EUPHRASIA, as in R543716, Grey Highlands. Civic address number is 076378 11th line. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard mail on August 4th, 2021 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the minor variance is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the municipality of Grey Highlands to the Ontario Lands Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the minor variance is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing or of an appeal before the Ontario Lands Tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. It is important to note that if you wish to be mailed a copy of the notice of decision and you do not live within 120 meters of the subject property, you must provide your request in writing to the Planning Department of the municipality of Grey Highlands. Electronic registration does not represent your written request. Staff can provide direction to you in applying in writing for this request for notice. At this time, the municipal planner will explain the purpose and the effect of the proposed minor variance, read the planning report, and advise of any comments received. Planner Rapke.
Thank you. The subject lands occupy the northwest corner of the intersection of Grey Road 12 and Side Road 22A, known as Goring. The property contains an existing dwelling and shed. The property is owned agriculture. However, the lot has a total lot area of less than 1 hectare, and under section 6.1.5 of the zoning bylaw, the provisions of the rural residential zone effectively apply to this property. The proposal is to construct a mudroom addition on the dwelling and to construct a new detached garage or shed to the west of the dwelling. The construction of the mudroom and shed in combination will result in a total lot coverage of roughly 12.3%, whereas the zoning bylaw permits a maximum coverage of 10% in the rural residential zone. The effect of the relief then is to permit the construction of the detached garage and mudroom with a maximum lot coverage of 12.5% versus 10%. The 4 tests of the minor variance in order for this to be granted are that is the request minor in nature, is the request desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure, is the request meeting the general intent of the zoning bylaw, and is the request meeting the general intent of the official plan. It's pretty minor relief being requested, 2.5%. To bring it up to 12.5 versus 10%. The lot's kind of undersized. It's an existing lot of record. It's a smaller lot. The 10% coverage assumed by the rural residential zone would allow generally a lot more structure than what is being proposed here. The use complies with the zoning bylaw, permitted uses, and what's permitted under the official plan. So it's meeting the intent of both the bylaw and the official plan. And it's been laid out in a fairly appropriate area. It meets all the other aspects regarding setbacks and position and things like that. It's just a little minor exception to the lot coverage. So it is desirable given the layout of the site. Comments received. Grey County Planning notes the subject lands are designated agricultural in the county official plan, but are of insufficient size to be conducive to agricultural activity. As the lands are already developed and the residential use is well established, the county has no concerns with the nature of the current proposal. Schedule E identifies the potential for bedrock. Schedule E of the county plan identifies the potential for bedrock on the subject lands. While lot creation and large-scale development are limited in these areas, the existing lot and residential development is already established, and the subject proposal does not propose any new sensitive receptors that would prevent future extraction operations on surrounding properties. The county has no further concerns with the subject application. The Conservation Authority at the high level had no objections. Their long version comments are attached, and none of Grey Highlands internal departments had any comments or concerns. That's it for that.
Okay, thank you, Planner Rapke. And is there any questions to the planning report from committee members? I think, Dave, a few times there has been different times we've been at the Committee of Adjustment for this file over the years, I think, hasn't it, Dave?
Probably once or twice, I think, or somewhere on that corner anyway.
I think there was an attached garage at one time, but that was there that I think was taken down, but okay. Very much so. Seeing there's no other questions at this time. At this time, the committee will hear any presentation by the applicant or their agent. Is there somebody here representing this file wish to speak? Madam Secretary Treasurer. You're on mute.
Oh, I can.
Sorry. There we go, Dan. Thank you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Good evening, Dan.
Do you want to see me?
Yeah. I'm not sure if we're able to see you or not. Are we?
Well,
It should just be the voice right now.
Oh, okay, okay.
We can hear you well.
I'm here. I'm glad that there's no objections that that are standing out. My only have a couple of questions about what was on the thing about this as of right thing in terms of like when did you know the section I'm talking about, Matt, where it talks about as of right to I'm just trying to find it here. Something about if it was built slightly smaller. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think what you're if the garage was smaller and say the mudroom didn't exist, there'd be no need for any like the garage can be built. It's just the mudroom and garage in combination push it over a lot coverage total. So both things individually are both permitted as of right. It's just the two of them that exceeds that coverage limit.
Oh, I see. Okay, now I get. Okay, yeah. Okay, I understand. Totally get it. So yeah, no, I just really want to try to make the corner look nice, and I want to put up a nice garage and have someplace to store my car.
Right. I was just saying to Member Clark that I think one time there used to be an attached garage to it, and it was taken down. I don't know if you were aware of that or not.
Oh yeah, no, that was me. I took it down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been in that house since I was born, basically.
Oh,
yeah.
And you got the history, yes.
There actually used to be a barn on that property, basically where this garage is going to go, and it burned down in the 70s when my dad decided to burn a bunch of brush. didn't go
Oh,
so
dear.
good for him. So,
That can happen for sure, especially
Yeah.
on a windy day. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
do you have anything else to bring to the committee, Dan? Mr.
No,
Matthews?
no, as long as you guys are happy, I'm happy.
Well, I'm gonna go to
Hey,
see if there's any questions, so just stay on the line here, please. So moving on, do we have any questions from the committee members to the applicant? Member Martin?
I just have one, and I'm sure the planner can answer it. 2.5% is basically what I gather they're looking for additional 12, from 10 to 12.5% lot coverage. How much smaller would he have to make the garage? And is that feasible to reach the 2.5% less so that he just has 10%?
Matt?
I can't do the math offhand.
I can't do the math if I had all day to do it. So I just wonder if it's like, if we're talking about going from a double car garage to a single car garage, or if we're talking about like a matter of a couple of feet, right?
I don't think it's sizable. Like really, again, the shed, look at it. If he came and he built the shed, first of all, he
Yeah.
wouldn't be here. And then
Right.
it would effectively be just an assessment of can he add a mudroom onto the house almost, right? So that's one way of looking at the relief here, is to just grant the mudroom expansion, because the garage can kind of just go ahead as is.
Yeah, and I think it's far enough away and designed properly. Like, I don't think it's encroaching. Like, that house is obviously built right on the corner, right? Like it's, you know, there's no setback there. So the placement of where he's picked for the garage is a good placement as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, you know, from a planning perspective. So I think it's a good idea. You know, I just wonder if there's some way that we can work around it, but if there isn't, then I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think it used to be a store at one time.
did.
Originally, a store.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. Any other questions to the applicant from committee members? All right, seeing none. At this time, the committee will hear any person wishing to object or support the proposed minor variance. Please indicate and state your name and address. Is there somebody here from the public that would like to speak with regards to this application? Madam Secretary, Treasurer.
Thank you. I'll just add, if anyone would like to speak, to please raise their hand and we can allow them to do so. At this time, no one's indicated that they wish to speak.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any further discussion on the proposed application from committee members? All right, so this is for a minor variance, and as the planning report is laid out there. So again, I should start off with this file, and this will go through all the other files. You can support, deny, or ask for a referral if you have reasons for that. So going forward to this application for A13-2021 for a minor variance, your position in this application, Member Clark.
I support the
Okay.
application.
Thank you for that. Member Martin.
I also approve or support the application.
Okay, thank you. Member Allwood.
I support the application.
Thank you. Member Allen.
I also support the application.
Thank you. I also support the application. It meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, subject to a 20-day appeal period. If there are no appeals, you may then, Mr. Matthews, continue on with your project. So this application has been carried. All right, thank you for that. And thank you for everyone for taking on that file. All right, moving on to the next file, item 5.2. This is with regards to, I hope I say this right, Roy Kostuk. This public meeting was called under Section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended with respect to an application for a minor variance, file A14-2021, affecting lands owned by Roy Michael Kostuk, described as being legal description, part lot 1, concession 5, described as part 1 and 2, RP 16R8763, Grey Highlands. Civic address 139 Beaver Trail. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard class mail on August 4th, 2021 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the minor variance is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the municipality of Grey Highlands to the Ontario Lands Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the minor variance is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Lands Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. At this time, the municipal planner will explain the purpose and the effect of the proposed minor variance, read the planning report, and advise of any comments received. Matt?
Thank you. The subject lands are located at 139 Beaver Trail within the Beaver Valley Ski Club settlement area. The property contains an existing dwelling and shed. The dwelling was constructed without permits and without a Niagara Escarpment Commission development permit prior to 2006. The area is no longer within Niagara Escarpment development control, and building permits were issued for the dwelling in 2006. The applicant is seeking to formally legalize the existing position of the structure, as it is 5.5 meters from the lot line and the minimum front yard setback is 7.5 meters. No new development will occur as a result of the relief that is sought. So the proposed variance seeks relief from the zoning bylaw to recognize an existing dwelling that does not comply with the setback requirement. The setback requirement is 7.5 meters, whereas the existing structure is only 5.5. That's the purpose and effect. This is a bit of a weird one, personally. So it's a request minor in nature. It's located 5.5 meters from the lot line, whereas normally it's 7.5. 2 meters is quite minor. I mean, the building exists. And staff, I will note, no one asked this to be done. It kind of just came up. The applicant hired an agent who I believe is here, who submitted this application just to formally legalize everything. So this has existed, I gather, for at least 15 years. Is it desirable? Again, it's already there, and I think the non-compliance is effectively undetectable, given that it's been there for so long and hasn't really caused any issues. And it generally maintains the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and that it's a permitted use in both of those, and it's pretty close to the required setback. Comments: Grey County Planning. The subject lands are designated escarpment recreation area in the county's official plan. Section 6.1, subsection 5 of the county OP states, Section 4.8 recreation area of the approved official plan for the municipality of Grey Highlands shall apply to the escarpment recreation area, the Niagara Escarpment Plan within the boundaries of the municipality of Grey Highlands. It is noted that the subject lands are located within an area of significant valley lands and are adjacent to a river. While no new development is proposed at this time, it is recommended that further comments are received from the local conservation authority. County staff had no further concerns. Grace Harbor Conservation, summary of their comments was that they had no objection. The long version is attached, and there were no concerns from internal Grey Highlands departments. So planning staff had no concerns and recommend approval.
Okay, thank you for that, Matt. I guess basically when zoning took over here, it's almost like legal non-conforming, right?
Not quite in this scenario. I mean, it's technically not legal, but I mean, a building permit has been issued some time ago. So
What I'm saying is when it was in NEC lands, it came back to zoning, it was already there before it came back, right?
in terms of NEC conformity, there's no issue there.
Yeah.
For it to be a
That's right.
legal non-conforming, it has to be legal under like zoning, and that's not quite there yet. But yeah, NEC doesn't have, like, there's nothing for them to approve at this point.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I know with NEC, there's no front yard, side yard setbacks. They sort of approve it on their own, and with this ruled in it, if it was done before the zoning, then there's where it became a problem, right?
That would actually, I think you just solved the riddle of how the permit was issued. So because I was
Probably.
confused.
Yeah, well, I've seen it before, and I know there's development from the NEC where there is no setbacks. There is no, sometimes it's the lay of the land, and sometimes it's valley lands or whatever. They got to try to pick the right spot. So, thank you for that. Any questions from committee members to the planning report? All right, seeing no questions then. At this time, the committee will hear any presentation by the applicant or their agent. And I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Kostuk. I maybe get corrected on that, Madam Secretary Treasurer. We have somebody here speaking to the file.
Yes, Krystin Rennie is in attendance, and she
Oh, yes.
also has a presentation, so I can share my screen for that as well.
That's right. Krystin is looking after this as a consultant. So good evening.
Hi, thank you.
Just before you start, how do I say his name?
Kostuk.
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 Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do have a presentation. However, the information that I'm going to provide is very similar to what is in this planning staff report, and that what Matt has spoken to. Really, I was just going to pull up the plan that showed the setbacks. So if you want, I am just more than happy to answer any questions that you might have, if that's simpler, just to kind of keep things moving along, because I know you have a few other things on the agenda.
Yeah, why don't you pull that up, and then if there's questions from committee members that need more information, you can go from there.
Perfect. If you just want to go back to that slide that had the two more down. There we go. Yeah, it just sort of shows you the setback from the road. There's a very long history associated with this. There was some lands purchased from the ski club. And so it's just a matter of, tying the bow on the package and making it clean and finalized.
Right. All right. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I said, I'm just here. I will answer
Okay.
any questions that you might have, if there's any
Right.
clarification or anything.
Okay, thank you for that. Then, any questions from committee members to Ms. Rennie? All right, I don't see any questions. Pretty straightforward. If you stay on the line, there may be questions from the public just for a few minutes. So, any person present or wishing to object, support the proposed minor variance, please indicate and state your name and address from the viewing public. So, is there anybody wish to speak?
I'll just give a couple seconds there for anyone to raise their hand if they would like to speak or ask a question on this file. And at this time, no one has indicated they wish to speak.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further discussion on the proposed application for the from the committee members for this minor variance? All right, so then I'm going to ask the question for this file A14-2021, as I mentioned, for a minor variance. Your position on this application, Member Allwood.
I support the application.
Okay, thank you. Member Allen.
I support the application.
Member Martin.
I also support the application.
Member Clark.
I support the application.
I also support the application. It meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, subject to a 20-day appeal period. If there are no appeals, you may continue. Well, I guess you're not really building anything, so you're just going to make yourself into compliance. So again, that 20-day appeal period. So this application has been carried. Okay, thank you for attending.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Stay safe. All right, so moving on to our next file. Let's get pull back my agenda here. This is item 5.3. And this is for A15-2021 and B20-21-2021. And there will be two ask for approvals on this one for minor variance and one for the consent. All right, so moving on here. This public meeting was called under section 53 and 54, section 53 and section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended, with respect for an application consent file B13 2021, and minor variance file A15, 2021. Affecting lands owned by Margaret Ellen Maxwell and Ian Gregory Maxwell, described as being legal description as part lot 1617, concession 9, OSPREY, as in R429173, subject to an easement in gross over part 2, 16R10071, as in GY 58655, Grey Highlands. Civic address number is 494371 Grey Road 2. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard class mail on August 4th, 2021 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make all submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the consent or minor variance is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the municipality of Grey Highlands to the Interior Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the consent or minor variance is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Interior Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. At this time, the municipal planner will explain the purpose and the effect of the proposed consent minor variance and read the planning report and advise of any comments received. Matt?
Thanks. All right, so the story with this one is unaware where exactly their property ended. The owner of 177 River Road, which is a residential, that one there at the top in orange, residential property, has been using the area to be severed from the red property here, so that little blue triangle on the screen, has been using the area to be severed as if it was their property for the past few years. It had some grass and a fire pit and whatnot, I believe. The owner of 494371, so the subject lands in red, recently had their land surveyed and discovered the inadvertent squatting on their property. The area to be severed is in a corner of the property that prevents the area from being cultivated with the rest of the subject lands. The owner of the subject lands has agreed to sell this small portion of their property to the owner of 177 River Road so that the lands can continue to be used as they are today, but under the proper ownership to reflect what's going on and so that everyone's all happy with their own property. The subject lands are designated as being within the secondary settlement area. The lands are zoned development and a minor variance is required to provide relief to the minimum lot size requirements of the development zone. The applicant has applied for both the consent and the minor variance. The purpose and effect then of B21, 2021, so the consent is to sever a 230 square meter parcel from the subject lands that will be merged with the abutting lands to the east. The retained parcel will have a lot area of 8.1 hectares and a lot frontage of 170 meters under Grey Road 2. And then A15, 2021, the minor variance. The proposed variance seeks relief from the municipality of Grey Highlands zoning bylaw to allow a reduced minimum lot size in the development zone. The minimum lot area for property zone development is existing on the date of adoption of this bylaw, which means that it has to be the same size that it is now. A consent is proposed to facilitate a lot line adjustment that will reduce the area of the subject lands from 80,900 square meters to 80,670 square meters. The variance is required to permit the consent. I'll start with the variance. The variance is only needed, again, in reference to that minimum lot size requirement. The development zone, I believe, is zoned that way to require a minimum lot size on date of the passing of the bylaw, just because it's kind of painted onto random sized properties that are anticipated for future growth. And the idea is that you wouldn't allow lot division with like the creation of new lots without first rezoning it to something that it's intended to be. In this scenario, there's not really a new lot created. We're just switching a little lot line. So the variance, and it's a very tiny portion, it's not facilitating anything that the zoning bylaw would not anticipate. So it is minor in nature. It's desirable to just align the lots to what's reflected there on the ground today. And it does maintain the intent of that minimum lot size requirement of the zoning bylaw, and this is permitted at the official plan level. While this field is being cultivated, it's a settlement area designation, so there's no need to consider agriculture or rural policies that limit lot line adjustments or anything like that. Moving on to the consent, again, I touched on it a bit there. The county official plan and the Grey Highlands official plan both designate this as a settlement area. Lot creation is permitted in settlement areas. This isn't really a lot creation, it's a minor lot line adjustment, but there's nothing really to contemplate in terms of minimum lot sizes here as we're enlarging the small lot, and there's no policies to prevent this from happening. It's a little adjustment that doesn't trigger any major development policies of either plan. In terms of comments received, Grace Elbow Conservation Authority is, again, summary of their comments that they had no objections. There's a long version attached. Grey County Planning, Bell Canada, and all of the Grey Highlands internal departments didn't have any concerns. And in conclusion, planning staff have no concerns with either of them and recommend that both applications be approved subject to the specified conditions, and to note that the variance should be approved prior to the consent, just to make legally them follow in the correct order in the case that committee didn't approve one of them. The conditions then for the consent would be payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, payment of the $300 approval fee, and that the property to be severed be conveyed to the owner of abutting land to the east, and that the applicant's solicitor provide an undertaking in writing that this condition will be fulfilled. Section 50, subsection 3 or 5 applies to any subsequent conveyance of or transaction involving the parcel of land that is subject of this consent, and that's just to make sure that the parcel is not legally conveyable again separately into the future without another consent. And that's everything for this one.
Thank you, Matt. Just a quick question. So you said the minor variance before the consent, but what do you need to create the parcel before you put the relief?
The relief effectively wouldn't allow anything to happen, even if you grant the variance. If you don't grant the consent, it doesn't enable anything to really happen anyway. So then it provides the relief for the consent. Then you don't have to have a condition on the consent that a minor variance be granted when you approve the variance immediately afterwards. It removes the need for an extra condition.
Okay, I just thought the consent was tied to the Thompson property, but until you pass the severance, the consent doesn't necessarily apply to it until you create it before you can. But that's what I'm just thinking. You need to create it before you paint the fence red. You know what I mean? Just that's that. I was just thinking that, but you're saying that we can create the minor variance first and then do the consent.
I think at the end of the day we'll probably be okay either way, but that's the way I would go about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Matt. Any questions from committee members? Okay. Seeing none then. So this time we will reach out to the applicant or their agent if there is somebody here tonight. At this time, the municipal planner, no, sorry, that one all right. This time the committee will hear any presentation by the applicant or their agent. Is there somebody here this evening wishing to speak to this application? Madam Secretary Treasurer.
We just lost them, and I think we just got them back. I will allow Karen and Mark Thompson to speak to this application.
Okay. Well, welcome and good evening.
Hey there, how are you?
Not too bad. Do you have anything to add to this application in the sense that you heard the report from the planner?
Yeah, not really. I just want to thank the planner and Elaine Phillip for helping me with all the paperwork and stuff ahead of time. And thank you guys for hearing our application. Yeah, we just wanted to expand the backyard here and make it really nice. And Ian went and did the survey, and I guess we've been kind of squatting on his land here for the last few years. So we thought maybe we better buy the land before we do any more work. So he's heard out our proposal, and we're hoping that everything goes okay.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Mark. And did you hear the conditions? Are you okay with the conditions that were read out?
It's a little bit too much legal for me to really understand, but I think everything's all right there, basically.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to hear them again, or do you, I can have the planner repeat them if you wish, or you understand them?
No, it sounds like everything's going to go the right way here to get things going forward, so.
Okay. All right, well, just stay on the line, and maybe some questions from committee members or be if there's any public. So at this time, do we have any questions from committee members to the applicant? All right, there's no questions there. At this time, any person present wishing or viewing to object, support, or have a general question for the proposed consent and minor variance, now is your time to speak up. Madam Secretary Treasurer, do we have anybody wishing to speak?
No, there's no one indicating they wish to speak.
Nobody wish to speak? Okay, any final questions from committee members? All right, so we have two votes on the, oh, go ahead, Member Alwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted, those conditions would apply to the owner of the retained parcel, right? Not the 177 River Road property.
That is correct. But I don't have them on the call tonight, but I do have the applicants. So
they're acting as the agent for the.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank
Okay, you're welcome. Is there any further questions from committee members? All right, so we have two files here to vote on, and I in the order I see it says application for consent and minor variance, but I'll follow the direction of our planner to do the minor variance first and then the consent. So again, this is the vote on the minor variance. So your position on the minor variance, Member Mark.
Can I just have a question of clarity?
Certainly.
The minor variance is just to recognize the undersized lot.
Member Rapke, Planner Rapke.
That's correct. The variance will allow. Let me just see the exact wording here. It will allow a minimum lot size of 80,670 square meters versus 80,900 square meters. So it's just subtracting the difference here.
You guys in your math again.
I know.
Oh yeah, there it is there, yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay, good enough. Yeah, I approve the application.
Okay, thank you. Member Clark.
I support the application.
Member Allen.
I also support the application.
Member Alwood.
I support the application.
Okay, thank you. And I also support the application. It meets the four tests of minor variance for the minor variance, subject to a 20-day appeal period. If there are no appeals during that time, the minor variance is approved and sees no delays on that part. Now for B, and that's carried. Excuse me. So for B13, 2021, this is for the severance portion of the little triangle. And again, the conditions were read out. So your position on this application, Member Allen.
I support the application for consent.
Okay, Member Clark.
Yes, I support the application as well.
All right. Member Alwood.
I support the application with the conditions as read. Thank you.
Okay, Member Martin.
I also support the application with the conditions as read.
Okay, thank you. I also support the application for consent, subject to a 20-day appeal period from the day it is mailed out. If there are no appeals during that 20 days, you may proceed with the conditions that were read out to fulfill that consent. This file has been carried.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I ask the planner a question before we move away from this this file, please?
Most certainly. Go ahead.
Thank you. So on A15, it says that minimum lot area for property zone development is whatever's existing on the date of adoption of this bylaw. So every development zoned parcel has to go through a minor variance if it wants to be changed. So now that it's been changed once, would it have to go through a minor variance again?
So assuming nothing's appealed and everything happens the way we've intended here, its lot area gets reduced to exactly what relief has been granted for. So now you can't reduce it any further without needing another variance. So if someone else wanted to do a lot line adjustment, for example, it is now the size you just gave relief to make it become. So then you'd need another one.
So you'd need a consent file and a minor variance again.
Yep, to do the similar thing. And then if like a lot were being created, it's, that would, a zoning amendment would be the appropriate one there, right?
Okay. So are we going to be looking at this during well, I guess I shouldn't say we, because this is not council. So I'll leave that alone for another day. Thank you.
You hold that thought for another day.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So that's been carried. Are there any follow-up questions? I mean, this also is how we learn through this process as well. All right. Okay, thank you. And thanks for the Thompsons for being part of this, part of the hearing. All right. So moving on, my computer went to sleep here now. I'm gonna pull it back up. Paper doesn't go to sleep, but computers will. And my agenda is on my computer. There we are. Okay, so our next file is 5.4. And this is with regards to Trimwood Corp. And this file is B13-2021. This public meeting was called under Section 53 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 as amended with respect to an application for a consent file B13-2021 affecting lands owned by Trimwood Corp. Described as being legal description lot 52 to 53 concession 2 NDR OSPREY. Part lot 52, 53, concession 1, NDR OSPREY, as in GS 139869, STGS 139869, Grey Highlands. Civic address is 329274, third concession. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard class mail on August 4th, 2021 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the consent is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the municipality of Grey Highlands to the Interior Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Grey Highlands before the consent is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Interior Lands Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. At this time, the municipal planner will explain the purpose and the effect of the proposed consent, read the planning report, and advise of any comments received. Planner Rappy.
Thanks. The subject property is a 55.3 hectare farm located northwest of Badgeros on concession 3. The property is an operational farm with a dwelling and several accessory buildings. The rear portion of the farm contains roughly 27 hectares of workable farmland. This workable field abuts an 8-hectare landlocked parcel with several ponds, a creek, forested areas, a house, and a barn. The landlocked parcel obtains access to a road via a laneway that exists on the subject lands and that fronts onto Centerline B, so a different road, which is to the rear of the subject lands. The proposal is to sever an area from the subject lands that includes the laneway, roughly 1.4 hectares of workable land and roughly 1 hectare of marshy, wet, hazard lands, and to merge these lands with the landlocked parcel. Purpose and effect then is to sever a parcel with a lot area of approximately 3.5 hectares to be merged with roll number 42081400021430, known as 309289 Centerline B. The retained parcel will have a lot area of 51.8 hectares and a lot frontage of 410 meters onto third concession. So looking at the map here, the red and blue are both part of the subject lands. The yellow is the landlocked parcel. The yellow gains access to centerline B on the south there by going through the blue area to be severed. And the proposal is to sever that blue thing and stick it to the yellow. So I've done a detailed report here. You'll note at the top, I am recommending this be denied. I do not think it complies with the provincial policy statement and the provisions that would allow a lot line adjustment in an agricultural area. It's quite specific when lot creation or adjustment is permitted. Based on my analysis, this is not a lot creation. It is an adjustment. And for it to be an adjustment, it can only be permitted for legal or technical reasons. And those reasons do have a definition, which is severances for purposes such as easements, corrections of deeds, quit claims, and minor boundary adjustments, which do not result in the creation of a new lot. So this will not result in the creation of a new lot. It's not for an easement. I believe an easement already exists for the yellow to obtain access over the blue. The survey for the blue does note easements, instruments on the surveyed parts. If this were the case of getting an easement over it, that would be fine, but this is a severance of actual land. And so it then has to be a minor boundary adjustment, and there has to be an assessment of what constitutes minor. And based on my opinion and some case law I've reviewed, I don't think that the moving of 1.4 hectares of arable workable land that is part of a farm parcel to a non-farm sized parcel would meet a definition of minor. That is effectively the basis of most of the review here. If it weren't for that, I mean, there's nothing else under any plans that triggers any concerns, but that's kind of a provincial level policy challenge. Grey County, I will note, to go into comments, they had a different opinion than me. They've commented that it could constitute a minor adjustment in their opinion, and there's detailed comments attached there. Nottawasaga Conservation Authority, the application proposes several a parcel of 3.5 hectares to be merged with another lot. The retained parcel will have a lot area of 52 hectares and a lot frontage of 410 meters on the third concession. Its property is partially regulated due to being within 120 meters of a provincially significant wetland and for floodplain hazards associated with the tributary of the Mad River. MVCA staff has no concerns with the proposed consent, but do note that the driveway and access to the existing dwelling on the benefiting property crosses a water course and safe access may not be available during a flood event. Grey Highlands Transportation commented that a detailed survey should be provided to confirm that the entrance is within the boundary of the severed parcel. I think they probably had access to a survey that was a bit blurry because of scans. There's a very detailed survey that does show it within the area to be severed. And Grey Highlands building commented no concerns and just noted that septics must be a minimum of 5 meters from property lines. I will note there is letters from the applicant and the owner of the subject lands indicating their intentions of growing fruit on the area to be severed with the enlarged parcel. And the owner of the subject lands stated that it's not very useful, the area to be severed for his operation. However, again, based on my analysis of there's imagery showing the area being cultivated in the past. So I will leave that there for now.
So is there conditions you want to, if the committee was, or do we determine whether the committee supports or not, whether there will be conditions if the committee, do you want to wait that step if that's the case?
We can wait that and I can work on some conditions for you in the meantime.
I'm not trying to suppose that, I
Yep.
want to make sure that we have a stage in there if that's the case. Okay. All right, thank you for that, Matt. And questions from committee members? Any questions? Member Allen and then Member Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So not a question, I guess. It's a comment, and the planner brought it up saying that Grey County had a different opinion of the file. So it kind of, I always think that Grey County is kind of the litmus test. They seem to be a little more restrictive than we are a lot of times, and so it kind of gets me leaning towards being in favor of this. I always like properties that are landlocked to have access. I have road frontage. It's in the future easier to sell. I think it just cleans things up. So I'd be interested in hearing comments from other members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It does scratch your head how it got created in the first place, right? Member Martin, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to echo some of what Member Allen just said. If it's a landlocked piece of land right now, I'm leaning towards making it not, and I'd like to have a parcel of land with frontage as well. I'm wondering if the planner can, since there is a house and a barn on the yellow part, because I don't know what else to call it right now. If we move that line, or could we explore maybe moving that line with the applicant so that it's not just that little severed blue part, but they get up to where the old, looks like there's an old survey line there, like an old lot line there. So if we made it bigger is basically what I'm saying. If we made the enlarged area bigger, does that change Matt's thoughts on it at all?
Just for clarity, are you talking of moving where it says 124 meters, that blue line, up to the 260 meters that's yellow? Is that your?
Yeah, at least to that. If
okay.
not, you know.
Okay, Matt, thoughts on that? Member Martin's asking your thoughts on that.
So my opinion would be that in the eyes of the provincial policy statement, that would be a more severe violation of their policy of removing farmland from a farm holding to go to a non-farm sized holding.
So then we're left with, it's the agricultural policies you're saying in the PPS that would prevent it at all.
They're quite restrictive. And as I mentioned, I have not put this in the report. I did do a bunch of extra research after my recommendation to kind of confirm that I was making a good recommendation. And there's other scenarios that sound similar. There's no maps. When it involves actual cultivated land, the tribunal has tended to very much err on the side of being restrictive, and that's been their interpretation of those policies.
Okay. And then Martin, do you have a follow-up to that?
I guess that's where the legal and technical sort of aspect of it comes into play, because there is another house and a barn back there, if you will. So could we make that house and agricultural building workable? It's a blurry one. It really is.
Okay. I guess the question is, how much land would that be gaining from size? So is it 11? What's it? 11 what's the size right now by adding that piece? What would that be? Is it 11 hectares? No. Just forget that size.
In order to comply with the policy, what would have to happen is the resulting two parcels would both have to be 40 hectares, and there's just not that land available here.
Okay. Any further up, Member Martin, to that?
No, nothing further at this time. Thank you.
So just a point of clarity. I know that you can have a residential lot that can still be farmed. And I know that for a fact that you can make applications. So there are some larger residential lots that have made application to OMAFRA through impact, that a portion of them can be farmed because some of them reduce that assessment because they farm in it as well. So I know that you can farm a residential lot through the process. Any other questions, Member Allwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Planner Rapke. So, I mean, your denial is based on the fact that you'd be taking that section of agricultural land in the proposed severed parcel out of ag. Is that the main reason? Or?
The reason is in the square area, the area above the lane, and the hazard kind of cuts through it on an angle. Roughly half, a little bit more than half of that is cultivated, designated as prime ag, and as part of a farm-sized parcel in prime ag. And the logic behind the provincial policy statement in scenarios like this is if you were to grant this, the applicant very well could plant a bunch of apples and all that stuff, and it could actually be used as an agricultural parcel. 100%, that can definitely happen. The logic is long-term, is 100 years, people die, people sell stuff, ownership changes hand. The parcel itself is not conducive to a variety of different types of agriculture, and it's kind of the size that generally gets bought by someone who's not a farmer, and then that 3 acres or whatever it is ceases to be farmed. And in the long run, if a bunch of these scenarios were approved, that the idea is that cumulatively it's not a good outcome. So that's the logic behind all that policy framework.
Okay, Member Allwood, do you have a follow-up to that, or?
No, I guess the long-term concern, because the letters indicated that they were going to use the proposed separate parcel for some agricultural uses, beekeeping and such, or fruit trees. But that's an interesting one. Thank you.
Go ahead, Member Clark. You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry. Just with regard to the easement that's there now, is it on the farm in question, or is it on something else? The farm to the south?
Matt?
So I can't confirm if the easement is in fact in place. I believe this was discussed quite some time ago with the applicant, and the survey that is actually in the appendices here shows on the area to be severed, which is part 6 and portion of part 3, actually, sorry, part 4, part 7. So parts 4 and part 7 both say subject to an easement as an instrument GS 139869, which I am assuming is to serve this property, only because I don't know why an easement would be existing over exactly where the laneway is otherwise.
Well, yeah, I guess I was just wondering if the rear of the farm in question is the yellow, it's just on the back corner of the farm. Is that what we're saying?
The
it doesn't
area,
go right through the center line B, does it?
The subject lands go from, I think it's concession 3, whatever's at the north that they mainly front on, and the parcel does go all the way to center line B. However, it's mostly the skinny laneway, and then it's that the portion that the 3-ish acres of farmland and 3-ish acres of hazard land that is being severed. Like all that ultimately touches center line B.
Yeah, because there's another property, another set of buildings down on the center line road anyway.
That is a different property, yes.
So I guess I would be thinking similar, that it would be better to have it in ownership of the lot and allow this to happen, as opposed to leaving it as it is. So anyway, that's just an opinion of mine. I could stand corrected.
So just for clarity, the blue line shows severance of the whole driveway and the little square. According to the one piece, it says retained or enlarged, but it says blue. The one map I'm looking at, it shows that all blue is severed. Is that correct or incorrect?
That is correct, and that will be stuck to the yellow.
Okay, so the question I think was being asked by a few was, that must be part of the main parcel, or you couldn't sever it if you didn't have it all one piece, right?
Yes.
So,
I guess I just wanted the clarification of that little wee strip was part of the farm.
it could be, but if it's not severed, it must have an easement. Is that correct,
Yeah.
Matt?
It has an easement. That's actually the other, like, it has its own separate pin, that skinny part. And I did ask the applicant to confirm with their lawyer that the consent should be for both the square part and the laneway together, in the case that the laneway were already separate. And he indicated that the lawyer said it all has to be one, because they are still both owned by the individual who owns the subject lands. So he wanted a consent for the combination of them, whether or not they're legally conveyable separately now, like technically just the lane, the skinny part without the square, from the rest of the subject lands. I do not know. I didn't get that confirmation. It's a good, the easement may very well apply to the retained lands itself if they are the same. I don't know. Like, I didn't get that information.
So for clarity, if this was approved, it would clean up all that, all that uncertainty.
If this were approved, it would definitely make this lot have certain access 100%. However, again, that can be obtained through easements, but yes, this would clean that up.
And I presume that there's a hydro line probably on that easement as well, which it probably has a separate easement because hydro has to have its own easement, or does that hydro come from somewhere else? I was just looking, I thought I saw one map, but I thought it showed hydro, but on that. I know if you put hydro in today, and if you're going across somebody's land to service somebody else's land, you have to have an easement for hydro, right? I'm looking at the with all the maps, but I don't see anything to say hydro on it.
I believe the applicant is
Could we
here.
ask the Secretary Treasurer to put the map back up so we're all looking at the same thing again?
Yeah.
Thank you. I have this survey pulled up that might also be useful. If the committee remembers, there was the part 1 on this survey was severed as a lot addition a couple years ago. So it might look more familiar on this.
Hang on, you just hit a point. Part 1 was severed a few years back. And part 1 is, wait a minute. Oh yeah, part 1's way over there. Part 3 is the driveway. Gee whiz. Yeah, so yeah, part 1 was expanding the box, right? Yes. And then the driveway is part 3. Is that correct?
The driveway is actually part 5. So the driveway is in this middle section here.
Okay, but coming from, that's including all the way from the road? Yep. Oh yeah, okay. Gotcha. Okay, so it's part 5. Is there a description for part 5? It says 0.134 hectares. Wow.
It'll likely be described in the owner's easement.
Right.
The multiple parts added together to make this easement. If I remember correctly, this was a little bit of a challenging survey. So the applicant may also be able to add some detail there.
Right. Okay. Yes, we have to get to that part yet. Maybe there's some answers there that we're asking questions that there may be some answers from the applicant. So why don't we, is there any questions right now to the survey that's up from committee members? I'll ask the question to the applicant about hydro, where it comes from. That'll be the best way to get that answer. Okay, before I go there, are there any further questions from committee members to the planner's report? Okay, hearing none, we can come back to that. So at this time, the committee will hear any presentation by the applicant or their agent. Is there somebody here wish to speak, or representing this file wish to speak? Madam Secretary Treasurer, is there anybody here wishing to speak?
Bailey Redfern just raised their hand, and I can allow them to speak.
Okay, I presume maybe this is the one that the individual is wishing to buy. So good evening.
Hi there. My name's
Good
Bailey Redfern. I'm here with my father, Roy Redfern, who's the owner.
Okay,
I'm
great.
just here to help because he's hard of hearing and not familiar with computers. So,
Okay. Well, thank you for doing that for your father. And do you have anything to add? Have you been following along with this?
we've been following the whole time. It's as tricky as you guys make it out to be. So first off, thanks so much for hearing our case. As you can imagine, this is something that's happened previous to all of us being here, and you can't even figure out how these decisions were made before we all kind of came to be. So what we're really trying to do today is rectify things that have been done wrong, I think, in the past, and trying to make everything right moving forward. And so first and foremost would be getting access to our property, or I guess my dad's property, from the road, because that's obviously the most important thing in terms of having emergency services. So right now, our neighbor approached us, so that is the Minor Variance, and he's the seller who asked if we would like to purchase the access to our property. I understand, just based on what you guys were saying, that no one has any kind of qualms about us having access to our property. That obviously makes sense. So we're responsible for maintaining the laneway. So in the summer, it has unique challenges such as, keeping the gravel clear. And then in the winter, we have different challenges such as clearing the snow. So things we've added to that laneway, we planted 1,000 trees along it to act as a natural snow fence. To answer your question there, Mayor McQueen, we do have hydro that runs along the length of that laneway. It sounds like the biggest issue that's come up tonight was that little bit of agricultural land. So what happens now with this really long laneway, it has a right of way that passes through the agricultural land, and the little blue square that we're asking to join our property, about half of that is going to be is marsh and will be kept as wildlife purposes. And about 1.4 hectares of that is the agricultural part in question. Our neighbor, Minor Variance, I think he might have written a letter about it saying that really it hasn't been that useful for him. The type of farming practices that he does, such as hay or corn or whatever it is that he's farming, it hasn't really been that productive for him. And even this year, he hasn't been able to farm it because it gets really tricky when you have to cross one person's property to get to another. So kind of in the field above, so you looked in his retained area in the red, he's planted all corn there. But in order for him to get down to this one little 1.4 hectares, he'd have to cross the lane to then come down. He can't even get access to it. So we're really just trying to fix things that have done previously. And I think you mentioned in our letter, we talked about our intent for the land. I guess to back that up, it's always good to have good intentions, but really to tell you what we've done so far. So we currently have 10 beehives. My dad's here, he can tell you all the varieties, but he's informing me we have 26 different fruit varieties on the property and over a couple thousand trees that they've put in. And so really we just want to maintain this momentum, and because I know your biggest concern is the agricultural use. And as you said, even though it may not be considered a farm size, it's still very much a farm to us. And we do have it registered as a farm business, and it's called Redfern Farms, appropriately named. And so we're really just trying to rectify kind of mistakes that were made in the past and to show you that our intent with the property in the future. I'm happy to answer any questions, and my dad's here beside me to answer all the details.
Great, thank you for that. And at this time, are there any questions from committee members to the, I guess it's the owner of the property's daughter. Go ahead. Is there any, sorry, your first name again?
It's Bailey.
Okay, Bailey. Okay, thank you for that. Any questions to Bailey? So just to summarize then, so the hydro line is on the easement, and do you ever have any problem with accessing the right of way in the spring? It was mentioned by one of the reports that it could be in a floodplain. Have you ever experienced any issue there?
One sec, I'll just ask my dad. So they're asking if there's any issues with the flooding. when you
When
cross.
Bob Young put in the laneway, he had an engineer come in, he does an engineer report on it crossing the river.
Okay, did you hear that? There's an engineer report for crossing the creek there. So he had
Okay.
an engineer come in and put in, I guess, the culvert in order to cross. So it sounds like they haven't had any
I have all the
issues.
paperwork. and all.
He has all the paperwork.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, and I don't know, there's no other questions then, so there may be some questions from the general public, if you wish to stay on the line, if there are questions directed to you,
Yeah, sure.
you may be out. Okay, thank you for that. All right, from the viewing public, any person wishing to object, support, or general questions for the proposed consent, please indicate your name and your address, please. Madam Secretary Treasurer, do we have anybody wishing to speak?
At this time, there's no one further wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for that. There's nobody from the public wishing to speak or any questions. Further comments, questions from committee members? So I guess the reason why, oh, go ahead, Member Allwood. I have a question. I'm gonna wait for you then. Go ahead.
Just a question for Bailey, if I could, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to be sure, so the driveway seems to go through, the easement rather goes, right, if you look at the survey, goes right up to, confusing here, but
That's not the lane.
it goes past the barn anyways and turns and seems to run along the boundary line of your property, but the driveway turns through sort of at the edge of the proposed severance. Am I looking at that correctly? I'm looking at the GIS mapping and the survey and all that good stuff.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, so you're correct. This is what I mean. It's one of those tricky ones. So you're right. The laneway does cut through right where that blue line is on the north end. That is
Right.
the laneway there. Go ahead, Dad.
There is an easement above it that comes in, but that's never been used.
There's corn planted along
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, the
Is that
lane,
with
the laneway goes where we have the blue line.
Right.
And for
But that
some
easement
reason,
is
they
in your
haven't-
favor, sir?
Easement above it, and they never put the laneway up there.
Right.
And that's where there's like red dots, the blue line, and there's some red dots there, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Any further comments there, Member Allwood?
No, I'm kind of leaning toward Member Clark's comments that, cleaning this up would probably be a good planning decision, but I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Okay. Further comments? I have a question or a comment. With regards to going back to the drawing of the severance and the retained, or I guess it's called the current spot where the house and barn are. So it sort of showed one map, there's a triangle of lowland or wetland. That's sort of in that triangle where you actually go through today. And the
Correct.
reason why I asked the question about access was if we were to grant the larger severance that you're asking for, does that allow you dry access to the buildings that you didn't have to go into the lowlands? Like, you see what I mean? Like, so if you go to one picture here, I'm trying to find the picture. This shows the picture. I think it's from the Conservation Authority. It shows the wetland area. Where is that map? Yeah, it's further down. It's the one that shows the wetlands. It shows the designation. It says land use designation B13 2021. I don't know, Madam Secretary Treasurer, if you're able to pull that one up on the screen. That's the one that has the, yes. Yes, thank you. So right now, as according to where you go, you come to the edge of the easement, you take a hard left, and then you go into your property, correct?
Correct.
But it shows the green, I'm sure that's a wetland. The
Yeah, it's a
designation.
big pond back there. It's all marshy.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is if there was happened to be a highland if we were to grant this, that maybe that's the reason why that other second easement is there, because if there's ever a high water level event, you can stay to the high ground.
Yeah,
So
that's, there's a big pond there and it has a spillway that goes back out into the river.
Yes.
So it will never go over the banks anyways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that
Okay.
that green there is just a huge pond, basically for property line to property line.
Right. I guess my point was if you had that field, it's higher than the wetlands or the hazard lands. That means that if you ever had to go across the field, you could. That's the point I'm
For sure.
trying to raise there. So it'd be to your advantage to have that square, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. You can. Yeah. We couldn't just cut next to that marsh. We'd be stuck for sure.
Yeah, you go right across and it would take you right to your buildings, because your buildings are at the very top of the part you have today, right?
Yeah.
I see them in the picture, right? So, okay. All right. Thank you for that picture, Madam Secretary Treasurer. Okay, any further questions to the applicant? Oh, sorry, Member Martin, you had your hand up, is that correct?
Yeah, if Member Allward was done with his.
Thank you through the chair to you, Member Martin. Yes, no, I'm satisfied with the answers I got. Thank you.
Okay. Member Martin, do you have a question?
So I do. I want to ask the planner a couple of questions. And maybe it would be helpful if we saw that last map again. So, Matt, if we had a condition, and I'm just sort of throwing this out there, if we had a condition, something along the lines of like an agricultural assessment study to determine, soil classifications and things like that. Here's where I'm going with it. The surrounding properties look to be all rural, or some of them were rural as well, right? Could we use the less stringent policies that exist for rural if we determined that this property wasn't prime ag? I don't know if you can follow that train of thought. I'm just sort of throwing things out.
If the designation could be changed to rural, then there would be no problem here 100%. To do that assessment is kind of like, if that's the justification route that's going to be pursued, that's a high threshold to overcome. I would not recommend that as a condition if the committee is going that way. That I think that would result in it coming back and not being able to be met personally, would be my thoughts on that. But theoretically, that could be done. I don't think that's a good approach to be successful if that's the way committee wants to go, though.
Member Martin, do you have a follow-up to that then?
So is there another route that you could sling back to me other than the agricultural assessment study that would achieve that?
To just clarify here, I get where committee's coming from, even from a planning end. The access thing makes total sense to me. The PPS does not contemplate those things in the eyes of ag stuff. It's very simple in its interpretation, which is the tricky part here. A solution that I think would comply with the PPS that I did mention to the applicant, they didn't really want it. It doesn't allow them to do kind of all the tree stuff they wanted, is theoretically, if the laneway were moved to kind of skirt the hazard area and it was taking the minimal possible amount of ag land with it and then entrenched the laneway, that to me could meet the definition of minor and satisfy everything. That's brings cost for them, remediation of a lane that already exists, and and things of that nature. So logically thinking, it may not seem like the right way, but it would tick that box much more cleanly from a provincial policy perspective.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion, Matt. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's the question comes back, how did we get here? Remember Alwyn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the planner. I mean, if we were to, if this committee were to look at it from the county's perspective, that it's just a lot line adjustment. So that's permitted under the provincial policy statement. And that would vary from your opinion with the taking ag lands out of it. I mean, if you look at this on the GIS, I wasn't able to actually go to the property, but I did study it on the GIS stuff. You know, you can see the situation quite clearly, and it really is a lot line adjustment to clear up a messy easement access problem to a landlocked piece of property. And in my opinion, I think I would favor it being considered as a lot line adjustment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Just following up on Member Martin a little bit to you, Matt. I know we don't have it in Grey Highlands, but Blue Mountains and other areas have specialty crop designation. Is that a possibility that this could be an exception, like where you have fruit trees and that sort of thing? It's a special. It allows agricultural lands to be in a smaller designation because they're specialized. Like for example, like in Blue Mountains, fruit trees, right?
Yeah, so I always found that to be a weird little loophole in the framework, in that the most sensitive lands are allowed to be smaller. It is kind of interesting that way. I don't think you could do, again, that's a huge burden to place a study like that. And I think it's kind of contiguity has to be established, like a big area, right? So I think that would be tricky, but you know, theoretically, if it were that kind of scenario, yeah, it could kind of be done.
Right, because that's how I think you can go, like in Blue Mountains, 25 acres can be specialty crop. And that's, what's that, 10, 12 hectares or whatever, right? So, okay. All right. So good discussion. Interesting. It's sometimes the community of adjustment gets interesting files versus straightforward files. It's all part of our job. So seeing there's no other verification for any further questions from committee members. All right, so this is for a consent. And if I gotta ask the planner, so this committee has three options: approve, deny, or defer. If this was approved, then we'll talk about conditions afterwards, and then I have to ask the applicant if they are okay with those conditions. So how do you wish from staff, how do you wish me to proceed? Is that
so
something?
I have three conditions that would be standard here if you'd like them. Cassandra can maybe read the, holy smokes.
Uh-oh, sounds like something serious.
Tornado.
Mm-hmm.
Cassandra can read the specific wording, but the three main ones are that the taxes be paid, any outstanding taxes be paid, that they pay the approval fee, and then the longer one, that the lands be added as a lot addition, and section 50 applies to the future conveyance. This doesn't actually need a zoning amendment if you grant it. All the zoning's already in place for this one.
Okay. Okay. Any questions? Sorry, Member Martin.
Yes. Sorry, my dog's going insane with the weather. If we vote for a deferral, can we work with the applicant to change the line? Would that be a minor adjustment, or would we have to vote for approval and then change the line? I'm just wondering. which
So
way?
just for clarity from staff, so I remember Martin saying it's if we ask for a deferral, you're suggesting that deferral would be to go back to the agent and the applicant to talk about. And can we give direction that way? I don't know if we can give direction that way because we're basing our information on what we're receiving, but we can defer for more information. So I guess in a way that each individual could ask for a deferral to ask for what you just asked for clarity, or if that could be a possibility. So I'm just sort of walking that through. Is that correct, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
Correct. The committee can defer for further information regarding the size or the nature of the proposal. And then further discussion can sort of happen beyond that. Just the application wouldn't be brought forward until the proposal was changed.
Right. If it was unanimous, or if there was a unanimous consent to do that for that information, right? Okay. So just to reiterate, that is, we can vote for approval, deny, deferral for more information on that. So Bally, you have your hands up. Did you wish to provide clarity on that point? See your hands up.
Yes, please.
Go ahead. I'll allow it.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so to Member Martin, I know that you were asking about adding kind of the whole square, right? So if you look at the very top of the line, is that what you're asking for the deferral for, to see if the property could be increased or the amount that's being transferred? I know from our neighbor, he would not be interested in selling that additional prime land that he's currently using to us. The big motive for him to sell us is, one, it's access to our house, and two, he doesn't use that little 1.4 hectares. So he would not be interested in selling more of his land that he's currently using. So just to keep that in mind. Thank you.
So is that fairness, Bailey, that he's gone to that second right away? He's just sort of cleaning it up just to go to that second right away?
Correct. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Because thank you for that clarity. Member Martin.
But would he be able to, or would the, I'm sorry, I forget his name, would he be interested in going less property and sort of cutting it across in front of the wetland there, like the planner had suggested, to make it smaller, so less land is coming out of production?
Less land, but on an angle to the hazard lands, but gives you a little bit of
Yeah.
slip to keep you on. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Bailey, do you have a comment to that?
Yeah, so first thing is we can't get too much closer to those wetlands. We'll actually create, our lane will be way worse in terms of getting flooding with it. So I think we're in a good area in terms of the high areas where it doesn't have environmental disruptions. The other thing is the hydro runs underneath of it right now. So moving it would mean moving hydro. Like, it's not just the location getting us, edging on as close as we can to that little wetland, but it's the hydro's got the right of way and everything as well. So that's just to maintain kind of what's going on.
So the hydro follows the driveway all the way through right to your
Correct.
property.
Correct. It's buried underground.
Oh, okay. Okay, Member Martin, any other comments or questions?
None at this time, thank you.
My phone's ringing. Thanks for those clarity points, Bailey. All right, so I see there's no other questions. So this is for consent file B13/2021, and I certainly have explained that the questions to ask is approve, deny, or refer, or defer it. Sorry, defer it for more information. Okay, is everybody ready to make the decision here? Okay, so and there was some draft consent or draft points raised that would attach to this as conditions. Okay, I don't get my glasses on to see you. So your position on this file, Member Allen.
I support the consent application.
Okay, Member Clark.
I support the consent application.
Member Martin.
Can I see the suggested conditions?
Certainly. So one is pay of taxes, one is, there's no zoning. Can you repeat those, please, Planner Ruppy? Or Cassandra, one of the other?
Perhaps Cassandra can read them out, although I might add, now that I'm thinking about this, because we have this weird scenario where the lot being enlarged does not have frontage, we can't do the normal process of spoiling a consent by taking a 1 foot by 1 foot square and merging it with the road allowance. The Planning Act has those pending changes to allow a consent to be canceled. I would say this almost has to be a condition in this scenario, or you will in effect create another lot here if the consent for that original lot is not canceled.
Okay, so that 1 foot by 1 foot is what you're suggesting would be right at, is there room for a 1 foot for it?
So that one won't work because you have to do that to the one being enlarged, and in this scenario that's the one that has no frontage.
Right, so it's sort of mute.
Yeah,
So just cancel that whole idea.
it can be canceled though. Again, there's pending changes to the Planning Act to allow you to just cancel through the obtaining of a certificate through committee. I'm assuming that's coming quite soon. It's just the Lieutenant Governor has to say it's a thing, but
I see.
as short of conveying land to someone else, that's like our only tool.
So do we need some wording that the lawyers handling this do that, what you're saying, or follow up with that, or how do you want it? Like, so you're saying is if we don't do anything, there's two severances, but they're both on identical spots. So it's a lot of adjustment. So the whole configuration is all going to change because it's a lot of addition to the original part that's there. It's going to join it up. So it's going to be a whole new piece to start with.
So what happens is if you grant this consent and it's stipulated, so this one merges, right? Like it merges to the landlocked piece. And in the future, they can't sell this lot without also selling the other part they're enlarging, but they could sell the part they're enlarging first because it has its own consent, and then they can sell it separate because they've got no abutting lands anymore. So then you create two lots.
We had that problem either in the spring or last winter where we came across where that was done and that was done wrong. Right.
Yes.
That was the angle piece or the triangle piece or whatever it was.
Yes.
So what's your suggestion? So can the 1 foot go back to the retained?
We don't need to do a 1 foot. What we can do is we can just make it a condition that the one being enlarged, that whatever consent was issued for that is canceled. And then we effectively have to wait for the Lieutenant Governor to make that a possibility. Like I said, it should, I presume those changes don't sit there indefinitely, and that should happen at some point, but they're going to have to effectively wait until that power becomes available, or they take a 1 foot by 1 foot square somewhere and the municipality assumes a random landlocked piece of land in order to facilitate that, which is kind of tricky.
Why can't we get that back to the retained of the original survey? Why can't the original severed part take a 1 foot and give it back? Because that changes it there. Why does it have to be the municipality? Why can't it be to another landowner?
Because if you've got to say it's this perfect square and we're enlarging that perfect square and I take a little piece off of that square, if I give it back to them, they still have all the parts that made up the original consent. So they still have consent to convey, even if you chopped it up into 100 pieces, as long as they have all of the pieces and sell them all at one, they get to do that while retaining abutting lands.
It just seems messy to take a 1 foot by 1 foot, lead it to the municipality unless you're on a little plain land on that. It just seems sort of, could we give it to Hydro?
I don't think anyone owns anything abutting is the problem. Again, the cancellation certificate is kind of our solution here.
The worry I have with that is is there's only so much time. You have a year to meet the conditions and you have 2 years to register. If that doesn't happen during that time, then the severance is lost just because of legislation that could be or may be coming in. Member Allwood, you had your hand up there for a comment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I remember at the conference, they talked specifically about these changes and they were pending, but I'm not sure what the timeline is. And, you know, there could be a provincial election coming up. Well, there will be an election coming up, I suppose. So, but it was certainly indicated at the conference that they were going to make those changes.
I think Sid the Tushier or whatever his name is, has been talking about those for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. But he was celebrating his success in getting it done. So
don't celebrate too soon.
Maybe Coordinator Dillman could enlighten us.
Madam Secretary Treasurer, do you have a comment?
Thank you. I'm not sure if I have put a solution, except to note that since the conference, there has also been a federal election called, which normally means at the provincial level, very few decisions are made until that's in place. And right after that, we don't know if another provincial election will be called. So I'd say the passing of that legislation is quite uncertain at this time. It's really, we are not sure if that will happen within a year. The applicant could come back and the committee could waive the condition. I will also note that the lot addition that happened a few years ago has been merged into the land. I mean, there is always the risk that the lot addition, as the planner noted, could be sold first, creating that challenge. There is a risk, but it could just be that we proceed as we have sort of historically. There is that option too.
And there's probably lots out there that have been done that aren't in compliance to what the rules are going to change. Question I have is, if we approve it the way it is, that legislation comes in at some point, does that all of a sudden take care of all this anyway?
No, not in my understanding. I believe it would sort of act like a validation certificate, or even in a sense how the certificate of official acts right now. The applicant would need to apply for it and the committee would need to make a decision, and then that change would happen.
I see. Okay, so it's sort of like after the fact. Okay, so generally, I asked the committee what if they support all the conditions. We're getting into a spot here where we're in this gray area, whether we do or whether we don't. My concern is if we put it on, as you mentioned, Madam Secretary Treasurer, that we're not sure of when that legislation comes. I think that's a really tough condition to put on this, not knowing when that is coming forward, because if it's longer than a year, then it sterilizes the whole severance. So the other solution is we leave it the way it is and we move forward, and that's the risk it takes. What's your wish here? Because we're sort of going through something that I got to two representatives of the committee that said, and then I got to Member Martin. She asked a question. I would like to get clarity here, and we can move on with the rest of the questions to finish up this decision on this one. Member Allwood, you did have your hand raised.
No, sorry, I'm taking it down.
Okay, so going back to you, Member Martin, I got to you for the vote. You asked for clarity on the question. I'm going back to you in the sense of, do you have any further point on that point of clarity of the conditions? Oh, you asked what the conditions were. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't clear it up very much for clarity. I don't think I got any, but I think in light of all of that and all of the discussions, my vote is going to be for deferral for further information.
Okay.
I'd like it spelled out a little cleaner.
Yeah, okay, so deferral. Okay, thank you for that. Member, what do we got left here? Member Allwood.
I approve the consent with the original conditions as read. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I also support the application to the conditions are read. I will want to formalize those before we finish this file. So we have 4 in support, 1 to defer. This file has been carried. subject to a 20-day appeal period once the paperwork has been sent out. If there are no appeals during that time, then you may proceed with the conditions. And point of clarity to you, again, Member Rapke and our Secretary Treasurer, I do want to detail those conditions just so the applicant does understand those conditions. Go ahead. Madam Secretary Treasurer.
Would you like me to share those on the screen now?
Okay. So just as this is coming up to Bailey and your father, I want you to make sure you understand these conditions so you are aware of them if you have any questions once we read them out.
So there's the payment of municipal taxes if outstanding, payment of the $300 approval fee if outstanding, and that the property to be severed to be conveyed to the owner of the abutting land to the west. So that's the 309289 Center Line B. And that the applicant solicitor provide an undertaking in writing that this condition will be fulfilled. Section 50, subsection 3 or 5 applies to any subsequent conveyance of or transaction involving the parcel of land that is the subject of this consent.
Okay, thank you. Can you just leave those up there? So Bailey and your father, do you understand those conditions?
Can you just explain the third one summarize it for me?
So Planner Rapke, can you explain that a little, or Madam Secretary Treasurer, whatever, who would like to go ahead?
Thank you. It's just a piece of paper that your solicitor signs right at the very end, just before your transaction is finally completed. So it's not actually a step that you need to do, just more so that you need to coordinate with your solicitor.
Okay, I understand.
It just Madam Secretary Treasurer, it's more of a process, right?
Correct. It's essentially your lawyer promising that they will add those severed lands to your lands.
Okay.
It sort of it puts a condition on them that they must do that. Okay, so that those are the conditions that have been read out and have been approved. And also this, like I said, this file has been carried subject to the 20-day appeal period once it is mailed out. All right. Thanks for attending. Thanks for the clarity, everyone, and the good discussion on that one. All right, so moving on. Again, my computer went to sleep here again, so I have to fire it up again. And it's back. All right, so we got one more file, and this is item 5.5, B18 2021 Bruce Trail Conservancy. This public meeting was called under Section 53 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended with respect to an application for consent file B18 2021, affecting lands owned by the Bruce Trail Conservancy, described as being legal description Part Lot 29, Concession 8, EUPHRASIA, as in R129569 and R451230, except Part 10, 18-21, 16R1751, STEU 14635 Greer Highlands. Specific address number is 136,857 Grey Road 12. The notice of this public meeting was mailed by standard class mail on August 4th, 2021 to the property owner and to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, and in addition to all agencies and persons identified in the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Gregory Highlands before the consent is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the municipality of Gregory Highlands to the Ontario Lands Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the municipality of Gregory Highlands before the consent is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Lands Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. At this time, the municipal planner will explain the purpose and the effect of the proposed consent, read the planning report, and advise any comments received. Matt?
The subject property is a 41.7 hectare parcel located in Blantyre on the east side of Grey Road 12. The property is characterized by a mixture of cultivated fields, forested areas, an existing dwelling, and an outbuilding. Subject lands are owned by the Bruce Trail Conservancy. The proposal is to sever the existing dwelling along with the cultivated fields to create a parcel that is 28.3 hectares, while retaining 13.4 hectares of forested area along with the existing outbuilding. The retained area will become a permanent component of the Bruce Trail network. The well that serves the existing dwelling is located on what will be a part of the retained parcel. The consent will include an easement over a portion of the retained lands to ensure that the dwelling has continued access to the existing well. Purpose and effect then is to sever a residential lot with a lot area of approximately 28.3 hectares and a lot frontage of 282.4 meters onto Grey Road 12, together with an easement over the retained parcel for water taking. The retained parcel will be for conservation purposes and will have a lot area of 13.5 hectares and a lot frontage of 287 meters onto Grey Road 12. High level here, the PPS and the Grey County plans, they both allow this consent for conservation purposes. The property is a mixture of agriculture and rural. The ag portion is shoved up into the northeast corner of the lot, being severed, and then it transitions to rural and into the forested area. There is a, as I noted in the report, and I think I have a map there, there's kind of a really weird pocket of what says is agricultural land in the Grey Highlands official plan mapping, which is effectively impossible to have under the logic of how those areas are mapped. You can't have just slivers of ag land. They have to be contiguous portions just by their nature. And it's mapped over top of the forested kind of valley area. I'm quite confident that's just an error there, and that's to be on the retained parcel. If that were legitimate, this would have a minor conflict with policies. Even in that case, our plan effectively allows these severances for conservation purposes in ag lands. So that's not a concern in my opinion. It meets the density requirements of the Niagara Escarpment Plan. There's the exception because it's for a conservation purpose, so that all checks out there. Comments received, Grey County Planning. Comments should be received from the Niagara Escarpment Commission and Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. Lands to be conveyed are to the county for road widening of the right-of-way as a condition of consent. Grey Sauble Conservation Authority summary of their comments was they had no objections. Grey Highlands internal departments had no objections. And I believe we had something come in from the Bruce Trail afterwards, and I don't have it in my report here. Although I know in conversations with them, they had no concerns, but we'll see if I can pull these up. While I do that, I'll let you move on to questions.
Okay, thank you. And there may be some consent to this as well. All right, any questions from committee members? As our planner is looking at that last piece of correspondence. Okay, no questions. I'm just looking to the sheet here on conditions. It's oh, there's the Bruce Trail. So there's some conditions there. Yes, payment of any outstanding municipal taxes. Applicant to convey part 17, part 30 of lot 29, concession 8 as a plan 16R-1751 to the county of Grey. So that must be road widening then. Is that right?
Yes, there is the county asked for the road widening. There's already a survey that's done, and there was specific parts that are already ready to go to be conveyed. So that was listed in the condition. I have found the note here. The They've reviewed the consent, mentioned that the Bruce Trail Conservancy is defined as a public agency and therefore is afforded many of the advantages that other public agencies receive when undertaking initiatives or uses that meet the purpose and objectives of the plan. The NEP also allows new lots to be created by a public agency through acquisition, disposal, or exchange, provided the lot does not conflict with new lot policies and severance limits contained within the NEP. The NEP supports the efforts to secure lands for a continuous route for the Bruce Trail and for the acquisition of suitable conservation lands as part of the Niagara Escarpment Parks and Open Spaces system. The acquisition of a portion of this property for trail and conservation purposes would further the objectives under Part 3 of the NEP. As the remnant lot contains an existing building and there is no proposed development or change of use proposed on either the severed or retained parcel, a development permit is not required from the NEC prior to consent. Any future improvements or development on the severed or retained parcels may require a development permit from the NEC unless exempt. The Commission supports consent application B18-2021.
Okay. Any other questions to the planner from committee? Okay, thanks, Matt. All right, so at this time, the committee will hear any presentation by the applicant or their agent. Is there somebody wishing to speak to this file? Madam Secretary Treasurer, is there? I know Antoine Diamond sometimes speaks to these, but
Thank you. Yes, Antoine should be able to speak now.
good evening.
Very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, members of the committee. I'm Anton. I work for the BTC and I'm agent on this application. I hope our application is a lot simpler than the last one. It was actually really quite interesting to listen to. So well done, everyone. So I have no new information to add to Matt's report except to reiterate that the BTC purchased this property in June in order to secure the Bruce Trail corridor, which runs to the south of the property. However, the property did come with a house, which we wish to sever and sell along with the farmland. And as Matt pointed out, the sliver of land identified as ag land is actually all forest. And also, as Matt pointed out, the house gets water from a Cartesian well, which is located south of the house on lands to be retained by the BTC, which is why we're also seeking consent for an easement in favor of the house so that they can continue to get their water. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Great, and thank you. Part about the water taking, that's makes a lot of sense. Okay, questions? No questions. Okay, just stay on the line if we have any questions from the public, please, or questions after it's raised. Any person watching wishing to object, support, or general questions on the proposed consent, please indicate and state your name and address. Madam Secretary Treasurer, do we have anybody wishing to speak?
Antoine is the only attendee in attendance. So no one else is here to comment on the file.
The quiet night. Okay. Any last comments then to the applicant or on the file from committee members? Member Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just with regard to the former Blantyre Community Center, it's on the retained portion.
That's correct.
And I guess I just wondered the status of that building. Is it going to be used by the trail, or just out of curiosity? It's
yes, no, I believe that stewardship has assessed it, and I think it may have come to the end of its life. I think we'll be applying for a permit to pull it down, unfortunately.
Yes, no, that is unfortunate, but time passes on.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Unless Dave, you take the initiative to go fix it back up again.
Well, I'll just tell you that my dad, that building came from Meaford, and my dad and the group of farmers around the neighborhood put it all together in the first place, and it's been going. It was a going concern there for 30 or 40 years. Anyway, that's a little bit of history.
Special history, yes. I wish we could retain it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you very much.
maybe there needs to be some recognition from the municipality in a sense of a plaque or something there, but
It's a good idea.
yeah. Any other comments then to this file? So this is for consent and basically approve, deny, or defer. So seeing there's no other questions, Antoine, are you okay with the conditions, or do you need those read out?
No, I'm comfortable with the conditions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Seeing there's no other comments, questions. So your position on this application, Member Mark.
I support with the conditions as read.
Okay, Member Allen.
I support the consent with the conditions as read.
Okay, Member Allwood.
I support the consent with the conditions as read.
Okay, Member Clark.
Yes, I support the application as with the conditions as read.
Okay. I also support the application, the conditions that are read, subject to a 20-day appeal period from the day it is mailed out. If there are no appeals during that time, you may proceed with following up with the conditions. This file has been carried.
Thank you very much.
Great. You have a good evening.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing on this file?
Sure.
Is it possible to identify the area with the easement for the decision? Just so that is clear for the surveyor and the person issuing a consent certificate in the future?
So basically some dimensions, just sort of walks and loads where it is. Antoine, is that okay? Is that possible?
Yeah, there's the easement is shown on the consent sketch, and it has been, and a draft survey actually will be available soon. It'll show the easement area as well.
Okay, so you have no problem adding that as a condition, just
To show it, no, not at all. Yeah.
Okay, that's good for that clarity, because yeah, time goes on, people say, where are you getting your water from? And it needs to be pointed out for sure. Okay, so that's been carried. So thank you again on that particular file.
Thank you.
So, have a good evening. So going back to other business, is there any other business on our, okay, seeing our next meeting is October 12th. There are currently 5 files, so you see there's lots of activity, lots of things happening. Just before our adjourn, I don't know what the weather is with the rest of the members. I know here it's got awful dark, and there's been a lot of thundering and roaring and making noise out there, and I don't know if it's the same elsewhere or not. Yeah,
It's raining pretty good up here.
it's not raining here yet, so I presume it's coming my way. So, so if we have a motion to adjourn, Member Clark, second by Member Allen, all in favor? That is carried. Everybody have a great evening. Stay safe, and we'll see you next month. All the best, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Stay safe. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry Lynn and Matt and Cassandra as well. You have a good evening, right? Stay safe.